Good morning and welcome to Amanda Hall Psychic here on Facebook Live, where we present our mini workshop series each week here on a Wednesday morning on Facebook Live. We've got a brand new time slot. For those of you that may have joined us from A1R Psychic Radio over on Facebook Live just prior to this, welcome again to a very special workshop series this week. And I'd like to welcome everybody that has joined us here in Australia. So let's get some T's and C's out of the road before we start. I do not perform free readings on this little mini workshop. It's an educational series where I do actually feature a soy candle of the week, and we actually talk about different subjects that are connected to the psychic realms. And this week I'm excited to talk about a very special subject, a subject that's very close to my heart, and I know that it affects each and every one of us at some stage or another in our lives, and that's grief. So this week we're going to be working with and featuring the candle called My Angel in the Sky. So I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome you here. If you haven't joined us before, welcome. We've been coming on this little segment now. It's our 41st workshop for this year, so we've had a really interesting journey so far. So for those of you that are new to the show, I don't give a shout out, I don't say hello and wave to everybody during the show, but if you leave your name and a little short message, I will get back to you in the next 48 hours. Even if you just say wave and say hi and where you're from, that'd be great. So kicking the show off this week, we're going to be talking about grief, as I said. Grief is a very, very personal subject where a lot of people sort of look at it as almost a taboo subject. And it's like, oh dear, I don't want to talk about that. I can't talk about that. They leave the room, they get very hot and bothered and uncomfortable and sort of get tongue-tied and don't know what to say. If there's one thing I can say about grief, it affects everybody. It doesn't matter what your social circumstances are, whether you're wealthy, whether you're poor, or anything in between. It affects each and every one of us. And it's a very personal thing because it affects all of us in a very, very different way. And it's something that I think that we don't talk about enough. And that's one of the reasons why I've decided to do this workshop again and to do it at this time of the year as we head into the holiday season, because I want to share with you some of the things that we can do to make this holiday season just a little bit easier and make it easier on people that may be experiencing the first holiday season or the first Christmas period without a loved one. And that makes it very, very difficult for people that really don't know where to go, what to do, how to say, you know, everybody else around them's happy and they're absolutely feeling miserable because they're missing that person terribly. And a lot of people sort of try and opt out of going to social gatherings and things like that because they feel that they're going to be such a wet blanket. This is the time when we should extend our love and our compassion and our understanding even more so than what we do at other times. Grief is one of these things that nobody can sort of put a timetable on. There's no particular time frame that says that you'll go through this stage for this long and this stage for that long, and then one day you'll wake up magically and you're cured. I don't think grief is something that we ever completely get over. I think we find a comfortable spot or a comfortable place to put it, but every now and then it rears its head again, and it can take us right back to the very beginning at any time. And people sort of look at me strange when I say that. You know, they sort of tend to think once you've got past a certain period of time that everything becomes right again with the world. Well, let me assure you, I've had many opportunities in my life where I've had to face grief in many different forms, and I can assure you there is no time when grief is completely gone. It's something that you can have comfortably put away, and it can take a little song on the radio or somebody mentioning a statement, or you see a particular piece of clothing or something like that, and it can take you right back to that beginning point, and it can almost feel as raw as it did when it first happened. So don't think that you're losing your mind or there's something that you're doing wrong that you can, you know, sail along nicely and then all of a sudden you're back to square one. It may only be for a brief moment or a few hours or a couple of days, but it is something that I say to people we never completely get over. And grief is such an individual thing. And I think probably one of the worst things we do with people that are around us that are facing such a loss or a tragedy or someone that's passed away through illness is we don't know what to say. And we sort of tend to think that we've got to come out with this profound statement that all of a sudden is going to make them feel 1,000 times better. Well, no, we don't have to make a profound statement that's going to take their grief or their pain or their suffering away. What we have to do is listen. What we have to do is be there for them. You know, there's no magical words that take grief away. And one of the worst mistakes that we make as human beings when we don't know what to say, we say, oh, time's a great healer, or it only takes time. Now, I know for myself personally, when I lost my husband only over 30 years ago now, if one more person had said that to me, I think I was going to scream or punch them in the face. It was sort of like those words are not comforting. If anything, they're annoying. they're patronizing, and they're upsetting. It sort of just says, it just said to me that these people didn't know what to say. So rather than saying something, they said that and then they'd walk off as if they thought that they'd fixed the problem for you. Well, no, it doesn't fix the problem. You're better off saying nothing. If you can't say something that's going to have some sort of meaning, then say nothing. You know, put your arm around them, give them a smile, give them a hug. You know, sometimes that's all they need. And I think probably one of the biggest misconceptions about grief is that people sort of tend to think that they shouldn't upset the person that's lost someone. That if I say something and they burst into tears, oh my goodness, I've done the worst thing in the world, I've upset them, they're crying again. Well, actually, that's very healthy. That's actually what we want people to do. We want them to cry. We want them to release that emotion. We want them to, you know, I believe every situation, every death has got a certain amount of allocated tears. And if, you know, whatever that might be for that person, until such time as all those tears are shed, they just sit rolling around inside our body and our emotions until they're dealt with. So, you know, the quicker you can get them out, the better it can be. Over the years in my work in the psychic industry, obviously I've got to meet some amazing people along the way, and people that are mediums that work with, you know, bringing through messages from the dearly departed and things like that. And I'm not saying it's not comforting, and I'm not saying it's not amazing. And I have immense respect for people that do that and do the shows and bring closure to people all around the world. And it's an amazing talent and a skill that people can do that. Yes, it is something that I can do. It's not one of my favorite areas of work, and it's not something I ever promote that I can do. I work upon the score for me. If they want to interrupt and come through in a reading, they will. And if they don't, that's okay too. I don't have a direct dial telephone to dial up Auntie Mary or Uncle Peter or whoever it is that you might want to talk to. So, you know, be very clear if you're going for a reading. If you want to really particularly contact somebody, then make sure that that person is the right person for the job. But what I have found over the years, and I'm not sure that, you know, I'm speaking maybe out of turn here, but from all of the world's greatest mediums that I've had the pleasure of working with and watching work, I don't know that anybody's got a direct dial through to who you particularly want to talk to. It's a matter of who wants to come through will come through. So please be aware of that too. And a lot of times the questions that you're asking are something that can be answered in another format, that can be answered with a, you know, a reading of the tarot cards or astrology or numerology or another form of the sciences. They're not necessarily a question that a medium needs to answer. A medium is to bring through your loved ones that help you get closure, or for them to be able to share with you the things that they see that are going on in your life. It's their way of showing off, in a sense. Oh, wow, I saw you butter the toast and it fell on the floor. And they think that's hilarious. You know, to you, you think, well, what earthly use was, why would you bring through that message? But they're trying to show you that they saw what you did this morning before you went for the reading, to sort of prove to you that they are always around you. They're still part of our lives. They haven't gone anywhere. It's just their physical body that is no longer with us, but their spirit, their energy is still connected to us. So be very careful before you go and have a reading or have a session with a medium, that be clear on what it is that you want, and, you know, your expectations are from that, and be aware that you may not necessarily get all the answers that you want, and they're not there to give you guidance on whether you should buy a new car or things like that. That's not their role. That's not their job. They can't live your life for you. You know, a lot of times, you know, we have people coming to us as mediums that want to know more about the circumstances of a loved one's passing, because there was a lot of unanswered questions, or they might have died in unusual circumstances, and they feel that they haven't got all the answers. Sometimes there will be closure in that way, where the person that's departed will come through and give us those answers that no one else has been able to give you. But a lot of times you've got to be aware that they've actually already been taken before the actual impact of the accident or whatever. So they really are as much in the dark about what's actually happened as we are. So sometimes the answer is there is no answers. So going back to our grief situation, I want to sort of share with you that there is no timetable for grief. There is no definite sort of time that says you'll be healed, or you'll be over it, or you'll be through the other side. There's a number of different steps to grief, which I'm not going to go through now. For anybody that really wants a good book to read on grief, can I suggest Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying? In my opinion, is one of the best books on the market that covers the different stages of grief. She's also written a number of other books, and there's books that she's written purely for children that are going through grief. So that may sort of help you. Most good libraries around the country or around the world will have that book in their on their shelves, and probably a number of copies. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that was her life's work, was dealing with grief. So it's one of the best books that I've ever read on the subject. So I hope that that sort of helps you. So how would we work with, if we were, we're heading towards the holiday season, which most of us are, we're heading towards Christmas and whatever you call the celebration, whatever part of the world you're in. How do we sort of acknowledge that or work with that, knowing that there's going to be so many people that aren't going to be sitting at the festive table this year, and you want to honour them in some way or respect them in some way? My suggestion is a candle that I designed a few years ago now called My Angel in the Sky. If I can get the lid off. This is called My Angel in the Sky. Now, I designed My Angel in the Sky for this reason. Most of us want to have a particular candle that we can use at those times, those special times when we've, got the Christmas lunch or the Easter lunch or somebody's birthday or even a wedding, where we want to have something subtle that's there, that for those that sort of walk past it and read the thing, they'll have an idea of what it's about. But I also wanted it to be something that didn't have any sort of connotation, whether it was male or female, whether it was for older people or young people. It was just a very subtle one. It's got a very, very subtle fragrance. It is called My Angel in the Sky. It's a candle that I quite often burn because, through my life, as many of you that are watching here, I have lost a number of people over my lifetime, and too many people to mention. And it's something that I burn quite often. And when I light it, I just sort of think about all the people that I've lost and the people that I miss, and I still miss them. And, and I sort of say a little prayer for them and say, well, this is for you guys. You really are lighting up my world. So that's why I used a candle called My Angel in the Sky. And it's been sort of one of our most popular candles here at Amanda Hall Psychic since I first developed this one a bit over 3 years ago now. And it was a purpose thing that, we were in the middle of candle production and sort of working out what we were going to have in the range. And this was one of those aha moments. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I got woken up and told, you're going to design one purely for grief, for people that have lost somebody, that is tasteful, that they can put, have it burning in the background, and people will just sort of, have a silent acknowledgement to it, like, walking into a church and lighting a candle. And I agonized over what to call it. And I thought, well, what can you call something like that? And then this sort of came to me, My Angel in the Sky. And it just all came together within a matter of hour. Within an hour and a half, I had the label designed. I knew what I was going to call it. I knew what the fragrance was going to be. And it was like, wow, this was really given to me from above, I believe, to help people celebrate this. So My Angel in the Sky, it has 2 wicks. If you burn 1 wick one day and the other wick the next day, you will get up to about 100-hour burn time out of this. That just makes it much more economical, and it also stops the glass from getting too hot. I never burn a candle without placing it on a coaster, never put it directly on furniture, because the glass container gets hot. The soy wax itself doesn't get hot, but the glass container can get hot. And I wouldn't like you to scorch your furniture. Please never burn them near an open window, under curtains, under air conditioners, or near children and pets. For those of you that want a smaller one, that want to sort of dot them around the house or might be traveling, this is our travel box or our gift box. This has 3 My Angels in the Sky. It's entirely up to you. You can make it up with whatever you like, but this is for this week's purpose. We're focusing on grief. This is where you can dot these around the house. These are a beautiful burning candle. They'll burn up to about 15 hours. They come in a little glass bottle with a lovely little glass lid. They're very, very special. And at the moment, we have a Christmas special going over at Amanda Hall Psychic. So if you go to the website, amandahallpsychic.com.au, on any of our candle services, products, readings, courses, things like that, if you type in the word Christmas in the coupon box, you will get an actual 20% discount at the moment. That's the biggest discount we've offered all year. And we do offer free postage here in Australia. And to our overseas family, the best we can do is a flat rate of postage. So if you want to order a lot of products, save your pennies up and order it all at one time, because you will get that flat rate. For those of you that don't want to work with a candle, can I suggest a melt warmer? Now, these you can pick up at your supermarket here in Australia or your department store for around about $15. They are electric. Take a couple of teaspoons out of your candle, put it in the little dish on the top, flick it on, and this will have the same fragrance burning, melting, sending the aroma through the house. It's much safer if you've got children and animals and people going every which way and you think, I don't really want the responsibility of a flame. This would be my suggested course of action. So going back to grief. Grief is one of these things that I think as adults, we tend to sort of forget that little people, children, go through their own type of grief. It may not seem to us adults to be as severe or as deep cutting as it is for adults. And I want to stand corrected on that. I think children go through grief in a much more powerful way than we do as adults. We tend to sort of dismiss the fact that they have feelings that they need to have answers to. They need to have understanding. They need to know what happens. And I'm not saying that we sit down and give them all the nitty-gritty, but I think we need to be open and honest with them to their age group, to what you feel their age can handle. Now, I'm speaking about this from firsthand. When I lost my husband, my children were very, very little. And it was my first experience, I must say, with, as a grown-up with grief. I mean, yes, there'd been a number of family members that passed away when I was a little child, and I was shielded from that. And I'd never been to a funeral, and I was well in my 20s. So it was sort of like a whole brand new experience for me, one that I didn't particularly want to go through. But I was, I had to face what was happening in my life. And I remember thinking, well, how do I handle this as far as my children are concerned? I had to be open and honest with them, and I had to tell them the truth as best that I thought that they could understand. And I tried to help them understand their grief and tried to help them find a comfortable spot within them, that they could still sort of honour the love that they had for their father, but also understand he wasn't coming back. That, this is it's not negotiable. We can't rewind it. He doesn't just magically appear in 3 years' time or anything like that. And I remember my family thinking I was stark raving nuts, and probably even my children did too, because I started little family traditions, things like I'd have a birthday party for him on his birthday with party hats and lollies and cake and things like that, and we'd sing happy birthday to him, and I'd make a joke that he wasn't very thirsty or very hungry and he should have been a good boy and eaten up his cake and all these sort of things. And the children got quite a kick out of it, but I also think it normalised it a little bit for them, that even though their dad wasn't here in the flesh, that they could still honour him, they could still talk to him, they could still make him a part of their lives. And the same thing with Christmases or any other special occasion in the family. We had a place set for him, and I used to make, and my family used to roll their eyes and think she's really lost it now. But it was my way of helping them deal with it. And I encouraged them to talk about him, and I encouraged them to have conversations with him as if he was still here. And I told them that he was there watching their running races or whatever the case may be, so that they didn't grow up with such a sense of loss that, it was somebody that, oh, well, he used to be in your life, we don't talk about him anymore because he's no longer here. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is that when somebody passes over, we tend to not talk about them anymore as if they never existed. And I believe that's very wrong. We do need to keep their memory alive and what they stood for and their good points as well as their bad points. And, we just don't talk about grief openly enough. Every culture has a different belief system, has a different way of dealing with things. I think we should have a much more open approach to it. I'd really like to see people sort of, take 12 months to sort of, I know some of the European countries that you have a 12-month period of grieving. And, the day after the 12-month mark, you get back into your bright coloured clothes and, you get on with life. But in that first 12 months, you have a license to cry, to scream, to jump up and down, to whatever. We allow that grief to come out. We don't do that here in Australia. We tend to sort of shut the door on it as if it's, it's a forbidden subject that we shouldn't talk about, because we don't want to upset people. So if you're spending time over the Christmas period with people that may have just had a tragedy or a loss in their family, don't sit there and pretend that person never existed. Ask them how they're feeling. How are you coping with your first Christmas without Uncle Henry? I understand it must be really difficult for you. Would you like to talk about it? Would you like to share a funny story with me about him? It might be something that we can all have a trip down memory lane about Uncle Henry and some of the things that he used to do. And even if they do burst into tears or look sad or whatever, know that it's a very major healing part for them as well. And the fact that you've acknowledged the fact that they are missing that person goes a long way to the process of them helping them understand that they're not forgotten, that they're not a leper, that they really did exist and they were really special and important. And I don't think that, and I mean, the same goes for our furry babies, our pets, our dogs, our cats, our birds, our canaries and whatever, they're all losses too. And I think we've got to understand that, to some people that have never had children, but have always had animals, they are their children. And they do feel a deep sense of loss and grief as well. It's not just about people. And, you know, it's not an uncommon thing to find, particularly when you get to a certain age, that, you know, there's a lot, you know, you have a run of deaths, you know, all of a sudden they're popping off like flies, and you sort of think, oh, gee, this is a bit scary. But it's not necessarily scary. It's just that's the stage and age we are in life. It's like weddings and births and things like that. But we've got to understand that there's going to be pockets of this sort of thing. I know for me personally, I had 3 recently in 6 weeks, and it was like each one of them were expected. I knew that they had terminal illnesses, but when the time comes, it's still sad. It's still something that sort of, you know, the message comes through, and it does take you by surprise. And what can I say to people under those circumstances? You know, all I can suggest to you is do what feels right for you. But what I did for each one of these people was I sent them a little text message each day. And it might have been, you know, something to someone else that was inconsequential, but one particular one of my friends that passed away, and her and I've been friends for over 30 odd years, her and I shared a love of politics. So each day I would take a photo of something that came through on social media, you know, to one side of politics or the other, and I'd sort of send her that message, and I'd say, oh, you know, look at this wanker, or look at this person, or look at what this one's up to. And we had a lot of banter and a lot of fun that way, where, you know, she gave them all nicknames and things like that. And it gave her something positive to look forward to. It wasn't at a set time of the day. It was just when I got around to it, I'd send this random message. And, you know, she rang me a number of times, and she said, you don't know how much that means to me, just that I've got something to look forward to. Each day I look forward to see who you're going to send a picture through of today and what the caption might be. She said, and, you know, and even after she passed, her family didn't realise we'd been friends for such a long time, and thanked me for all the messages that I'd sent her. And when I sent a message back and said, well, we've been friends for over 30 years, and they said, well, we weren't aware of that. She was such a private person. But we know by reading through the messages, you brought her such joy. And I thought, well, it doesn't take much to brighten someone's day. Just because they're dying doesn't mean that they can't live each day to the fullest, and that you can't bring a smile to their faces. So maybe if you're facing that sort of thing and you don't know what to do something random like that. Find something that you think will work for them. You know, for my other 2 people, it was sort of, I sent them different things because they weren't interested in politics. But, you know, one particular guy, we did a lot of work together. We travelled and did a lot of expos over the years, and I sent him random messages. Do you remember so-and-so and what they used to do, or how they used to eat hot dogs or whatever? And I kept it alive that way for him. And his wife told me that, you know, that brought such a smile to his face and eased his pain a little bit, you know, while he talked about it. Do you remember so-and-so and this and that and the other? And Amanda said, you know, they used to do this and that and the other. And apparently that gave him some, you know, a brief moment of relief as well. So, you know, find what you think is going to work for you, and it doesn't take much out of your day. So I hope you, I'm not going to say I hope you've enjoyed this workshop, because I don't know that talking about grief is an enjoyment. I hope in some way I've helped you understand a little bit more about how grief works, how personal it is, how it's something that we all need to take responsibility for, and that we all can do something beautiful for the people that are still living and for the people that are going through the early stages of grief. And don't forget, it doesn't stop just because we've passed the 1 year mark or the 2 year mark or the 10 year mark. Grief is something that we live with each and every day. So next week on the show, we're going to have a brand new workshop. We're going to have one, and it's called The New Moon in Sagittarius. Woohoo, let's get our intentions ready for the Sagittarian time of the year. And it's my favourite time of the year. For those of you that watch regularly, you'll know I'm a Sag, and it's my favourite time of the year, particularly as we head towards Christmas. I just absolutely adore Christmas, always have done. If Christmas could be every day of the year, I'd love it that way, because I just love the energy, the excitement, the happiness, the joy, and the anticipation of a much better, brighter world to come. And I think that's probably the most magical part about Christmas, is the wonderment, the excitement on children's faces as they sort of look towards Santa coming and maybe having their wishes fulfilled with their special toy or whatever. But it's that magic, it's that energy, that joy, that happiness, that sharing. I know a lot of people complain about it, oh, it's too busy and you've got to go to too many parties and whatever, but just soak it in, enjoy them, the optimism and the joy and the happiness that is brought about on people's faces by spending this very, very special festive part of the year. So until next week, I hope you have an absolutely awesome week. I know I'm going to. I get to go and see John Edward tomorrow night and bask in his energy for a couple of hours at his show here on the Gold Coast. And, you know, to be in the audience and to experience people getting closure and getting readings from the other side and messages from their loved ones, that's the joy for me. I mean, I don't go expecting to get a reading, and I would be absolutely dumbstruck if I did, because that's not what I'm there for. I just enjoy watching that man work, and it's such an uplifting high to spend a couple of hours in the audience and see this master at work and feel the healing and the energy and the upliftment that comes from being in the audience with John. He's just an absolute master, and I take my hat off to him, and I'm really excited about it. But until next week, bye for now.